Hi witches! So today I am so excited about this topic. We're gonna take a look at deity work. So if this is not your bag, it's totally fine. I will see you tomorrow and we will do some altar setup. But if you are interested in working with deities, stay tuned because this is gonna be kind of long. I personally work with like Celtic and Anglo-Saxon deities, the Morrigan and Herne. But many pagans work with gods and goddesses like across all pantheons, which is like so cool. Today we're going to talk about a few, like literally just not even like scratching the surface, because otherwise this would be like 8.5 hours long. But we're going to talk about a few like prominent gods from the Celtic, the Norse, the Greco-Roman, and the Egyptian mythologies or pantheons of gods, right? So please note, again, like this is not an exhaustive list of all of them, and I really recommend that you do some more research into open pantheons. I do plan to do a part 2, so if there's anything that you really want me to talk about, again, like always, leave it down below and I will like calculate that in. I also want to note that there is such thing as a closed practice in which you cannot just say like, hey, I am now a practitioner of like this, right? So this includes like religions that you have to like either be born into or like really study and focus on for like a number of years, and like be initiated in. There's like a whole rigmarole for it, right? So that includes any indigenous religions, so like First Nations peoples, sorry, and anything with like voodoo or Santeria, which is like kind of personal to me, and like I don't know if you guys know this, but my dad's side, I am Puerto Rican, and I do have people who practice Santeria. And that being said, I don't have a license to say like, hey, I am a Santera. Like I have never studied it. I don't really desire to do that, but like I can't just say like, hey, I am blah 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 blah, because they you know made a commitment to learn about it and were initiated and you know did something, so they kind of get that right to claim it. But I can't just be like, well, I'm Puerto Rican, so therefore I can practice Santeria. Like it's not that easy, right? So you know, if you're unsure about something, or you know, I would really talk to someone who practices that religion and kind of get their take on it. I'm not going to be the one to give you advice on that, just because like I don't really know that I have a license to any closed practices. So just be careful and like be respectful, and like that's the best. I think respect is the best policy, right? So anyways, now that that disclaimer is out of the way, let's talk about some deities. So we're gonna first talk about the Celtic deities. The first one that I want to talk about is Danu, who is kind of overlooked. She's not super mentioned a lot in like the old texts. But she's like the Celtic mother goddess, and she's thought to have given birth to most of the gods, and give them like their godly wisdom. And her children are called and please correct me if I'm wrong, the Tuatha De Danann, or Danan, but that just means the children of Danu, right? So the chief of those gods is Dagda, which I am so sorry if I'm butchering all of these names. I'm really trying my hardest. But he is the god of life and death, of agriculture and fertility. There's Lu, the Irish god of kings, justice, and the master of arts. He's also a trickster god, and we celebrate Lunasa, or Lunasa. I've always thought it was Lunasa, so but we celebrate him and celebrate the harvest season. You have Caradwen, the White Witch, who has this cauldron that grants wisdom and beauty, and also is like, she's kind of a prophesier, I don't know, soothsayer kind of, but that's Greek. Anyways, you have Cernunnos, who is known as the Horned God, and he is the lord of the forest and the leader of the wild hunt. Then you have Brigid, who is the Irish goddess of spring, life, fertility, and her holiday is Imbolc, which is celebrated on February 1st, and I will be talking about that in like 2 weeks. And then finally you have the Morrigan, who is the Phantom Queen, the goddess of death, discord, war, and prophecy, but like also fertility kind of, and she is both like one entity and also 3 at the same time. So a lot of people see her as a triple goddess. She really has to do with transformative work, and I've been working with her for pretty much as long as I've been practicing. She came to me very early, And then Hearn is even longer than that, truly. But he is kind of like a more like modern aspect of Cernunnos, the god of the wild hunt, or the horned god. The next pantheon that we're going to look at is the Norse pantheon. I think this is very cool, and I really like the just like the poetic Eddas are very interesting. I've read a couple of them, and like the cosmology, like the way they organize like the 9 realms is very cool to me. I've never really been called by a Norse god, but I mean, I think it's really cool, so who knows, maybe in the future. Anyway, so we're going to start off with Odin, who is the chief of the gods. He is the god of wisdom. He was a great warrior and also called the Allfather. And he's also the god of poetry and magic, so very cool. The next one we're going to talk about is Thor, who's the god of thunder. He is also the strongest of all gods and men and protects Midgard, or like the earth, with his hammer Mjolnir. And he is like portrayed in the Avengers movies, like I don't know if it's really that faithful, but whatever. And then there's Loki, who is the Norse trickster god, and he's also a shapeshifter. And he just causes like chaos and is prophesied, whatever, to cause the end of the world, or Ragnarok, right? So that's like pretty heavy. There's Freya and Freyr, or Freya and Frey. I've heard both terms, so anyways. Freya is the goddess of love, lust, and fertility, and she is kind of seen to be a divine feminine figure in the Norse pantheon, whereas her twin brother Freyr is the god of peace and prosperity, and he is seen to be kind of a divine masculine figure in the Norse pantheon. Then you have Njord, who is the god of the sea, and he is the patron of sailors and fishermen. So if you're like very connected with water, maybe, you know, Njord is calling to you. Heimdall is one of my favorite of the Norse pantheon. I feel like he just doesn't get enough of a shout out, but he's the protector of the gods, right? And he is the guardian of the 9 realms. He's the god of wisdom and a protector of humans. So very cool. I really love the Norse pantheon. I think it's very, like, I don't know, there's just something super awesome about it. So the next one we're going to talk about is like the Greek pantheon. I totally forgot to write down the Roman names for these, but the Greek names, like the Greco-Roman gods, they all kind of have the same attributes. So I'm going to go by Greek names, and I will try to put them in the description below with like the proper like Roman names, right? So just a caveat. First one we have is Zeus, who is the king of the gods of Olympus, and he's known as the Lord of the Skies. He is famous for his thunderbolt, and like thunderstorms, I guess, and also like the numerous affairs he had, much to the chagrin of his wife Hera, who's the queen of the gods, and whose life like kind of revolved around her like getting back at Zeus and like his lover, and it's a whole thing. It's a lot. It's really cool though. Like I love reading about the Greek gods. The next one is Poseidon, who is the god of the sea, and the brother of Zeus, so again, water-based. He is thought to control earthquakes, and is also associated with horses, and he was even called Hippos, which means Lord of Horses, which is kind of cool. There's Hades, who is the god of the underworld, and the ruler of the dead. He's the brother of Poseidon and Zeus, but didn't live on Mount Olympus. He lived in the underworld, and he, like, much to everyone, I feel like people kind of portray him as being like the devil, or like on the same level as that, but he's not. He's just like, he rules the underworld. So the next one we have is Athena, who is the goddess of wisdom, craftsmanship, and warfare. She's the patroness of Athens, and often aided heroes on their quests. There's Artemis, who is the goddess of the wilderness and the wild hunt, and a champion of women. And she is the twin of Apollo, who is the god of like the sun and skies, I believe. There is Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love, passion, procreation, and beauty. She also is the patroness of erotic desire, like across the board. So like basically Aphrodite said gay rights, like, is what I'm saying. So then there's the god Hermes, who is the god of luck, medicine, communication, travel, and commerce. And he is like the trickster deity of the Greek pantheon. But he kind of carried messages for the Olympians by wearing his winged sandals that we all kind of, I hope, can picture. So for our final pantheon, we have the Egyptian Pantheon. We're gonna start with Ra, who was kind of the god of the sun, but really more like the creator entity. So I feel like he is more kind of like Danu, or like one of the Titans almost, right? So he, or like Gaia, who was like a part of the Greek pantheon. I didn't talk about her because there are like tons and tons of like primordial Greek gods and goddesses that are like very cool. But again, I'm just barely scratching the surface on this. Anyways, Ra was born at the dawn of time, and he's kind of like a very ultra powerful being, the plight of the gods in the Egyptian pantheon is that they were often vying for his power. So then you have Isis, who is the wife of Osiris, and the mother of Horus, who she protects at all costs. So she was kind of seen as an enchantress or a sorceress goddess. And a healer, sorry, that's another thing. She was a healing goddess. Osiris is the god of the Egyptian afterlife and the underworld. So he was a great king, and then after in life he was a great king, and then he died and became like the judge of the dead in the afterlife. So you often see him, I think in a lot of the hieroglyphs he has like a green face, which is like kind of cool. And he's seen as like the god of the dead, right? So kind of, because he's the god of the afterlife, because Anubis, the god I'm just about to talk about, is the god of the dead and mummification, and he is portrayed with having the head of a jackal. He's like one of my favorite gods. I am so goth, like I just love all of the death related gods. I'm so sorry, but he just looks very like striking and very cool. Horus, who is the son of Osiris and Isis, he's the god of the sky, war, protection, and he is one of like the best known Egyptian deities and the most revered. He had the head of a hawk or a falcon, and he fought Set, who is like I believe a snake and or crocodile. Please don't like hurt me on that one. But they fought each other at some point for power. So that was like a huge like epic tale, and I can go into that more on a different episode or a different like video. Anyways, we have Bast, who is the goddess of warfare, the protector of mothers and children. She's the goddess of sex and fertility, and she's often portrayed in the image of a cat or a lioness. It kind of just depended on what part of the or what era of time during the Egyptian civilization, right? Or ancient Egyptian civilization you're looking at. So she kind of evolved, and all of them kind of evolved. The Egyptian pantheon is very, very interesting. So anyways, she is one of the reasons that cats were so revered within the Egyptian household, which is very cool. And then finally we have Thoth, who is the god of writing, wisdom, the moon, and scribes. So he's portrayed with the head of an ibis, which is kind of like a large bird, and he's kind of like the god of wisdom. So again, this is a non-exhaustive list of some of the gods from the pantheons that are commonly worshipped by pagans today. Deity work is very, very personal, so I don't want to jump the gun and say yes, you will revere, the gods will reveal themselves to you. If you're just not feeling that and you are really wanting to work with a god, or goddess, I should say, you want to work with one but are unsure if they are receptive to you, I recommend meditating on it and introducing yourself, and giving them an offering, a gift, a physical item, right? And they will likely respond in kind one way or another. No, just keep your eyes peeled for signs. So let me know if you want a more in-depth video on connecting with deities or how to start worshiping a deity. Tomorrow's video is gonna be way shorter. I'm gonna just talk to you through how I set up my altar. All right, guys, bye.